Don't be a fool. Know your tools. Hello everyone, Bront CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here to talk about the tools of Raid. So I am here on one of my accounts. We are on the main, it looks like, and honestly, it doesn't really matter. I use these tools with every account that I work on. So knowing what you can use, knowing some of the tools that you can reach out to, some of them are going to be PC only, some of them are going to be usable on mobile as well, and some of them are just website tools that are very useful for you to know how to use. So we will take a look at all of them in depth and, go through them a little bit, check out a couple of the websites, check out a couple of tools, walk you through some of the basics on how to use them. And you know what? If there's a tool you'd like me to go into just a little bit more for how to use it, well, let me know and maybe we'll do a deep dive video on that. So until then, here's our first tool. So the first one we're going to talk about here is the Hell Hades website. And the Hell Hades website has a couple of different and interesting tools here. We're going to talk about one of them now, and we'll talk a little bit about the other one later. But you've got all kinds of interesting articles here. So if you go up to articles, you can certainly see some of the articles that they have loaded up here. So there's a couple of writers for Hell Hades. In fact, I believe Nub Raids and YST are two of the chief writers for this. So they do content creation here as well. They do articles. So if you'd prefer to read stuff rather than check things out on YouTube, you can certainly read stuff here. Sometimes there's great information. It's very good for reference for later on as well. So for example, if you actually need to check and see when a specific fusion happened, you can check some of that as well. There's also a bunch of different options under here under the Raid Shadow Legends tab. You can see they can generate new player links. So if you want to do a new player link that is, well, not mine, well, you'd be wrong, but you can certainly go here. On the other hand, if you want a really good link, go check out my link down below. Get yourself a Rector Drath and an Ugo. Very, very good endgame epic champions will be on your account for a long time and help you out a ton. But looking here, you can see getting started in Raid. There's a quick guide on getting started in Raid, guide for Affinity, guide for other stuff here, information on the various missions that you can encounter, Doom Tower information. Where I tend to find a lot of use for their stuff here is there's a champion tier list where you can go in here and they give you a general list overall of the champions in their tier. Now, these are the opinions of a couple of people, so do not take these as the only opinion, but they can be very good for figuring out where a champion can be good, where a champion, whether or not a champion could be better. There's a lot of 5s here. Warlord, certainly a 5. Honestly, I think Warlord may have been power crept just a little bit. Still a very good champion. Theodore, very, very good. Krisk, absolutely amazing. And again, you're on a 1 to 5 scale, so there's only so much you can do to differentiate a 4.5 from a 5, but you have specific areas here as well. So for example, if you're actually looking for a Hydra champion, you can certainly sort this up. And they've got Theodore as a good Hydra champion. You've got Amius on the other hand. Akrisi is good for Amius. You can sort these out and check these out as well. Plus, if you want to search for a champion, such as, let's go for Rector Drath, you can search for Rector, and there she is. Click on her here, and here we go. We've got the write-up of Rector Drath. So they've got an overview here, so you can read the overview a little bit. Talks about the skills and the skill usage, what they might be good for. You got the individual areas for the champion right here. You've got live arena statistics, so you can check all the way through to gold 4 to see how often she's picked and whether the win rate is. Now keep in mind, these are interesting stats. People do have to have the Hell Hades optimizer running in the background while this is happening to collect this data. So not all this data is going to be perfectly accurate, but it's a sample size at least, which is kind of good. You've got things like the book values, as whether or not you should book these champions, a good look at all their different skills. And overall, it's a great resource for looking up champions, taking a look, and I can say, hey, Rector Drath is a 4. That's good to know, so I don't, whether or not I want to build a Rector Drath. If I wanted to look up, I could go look up Kale. And of course, it actually tells me, do you want Kale, Supreme Kale, or Dark Kale? We go look at regular Kale here. Well, he's a 3.5 and he's a rare, so you can also judge that from what level they are as well. You're certainly going to have trouble finding rares that are going to be over 3.5, much like you might have trouble finding some epics that are going to be higher than 4.5. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but do keep in mind that legendaries tend to be better than epics. Epics tend to be better than rares. You're not going to find a lot of the uncommons or commons champions here unless they are ones of particular value. So if you search for a common or uncommon, you are probably not going to find them. There's a couple of them that are worth looking into or worth building, or just for some reason happen to have an article on them. But there's all kinds of interesting information here. One of the other places that is really, really helpful is we have the Raid Stages tool right here. There's a bunch of different tools here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the Raid Stages tool is an amazing tool as well. So if I'm building a team and I need to know what my minimum stats are for that team, well, I can choose an encounter. So let's go choose a dungeon encounter. Let's go choose the Iron Twins. In fact, we'll check Iron Twins Void. We'll select normal difficulty because there's only normal difficulty, and we will select stage 12. Well, on stage 12, we can see that the resistance that we have here, he's got 250 resistance, so it is recommended we have about 275 accuracy to be able to pierce that resistance. Meanwhile, he has about 250 accuracy, so you're recommending about 355 accuracy or resistance to overcome his accuracy if you want to avoid the debuffs. It talks about effective HP, which is basically an algorithm between his defense and his HP, but you've got all of his stats here ready to go, so you can see how fast the boss is, you can see how much health the boss has, you can see the accuracies and the resistance. This is very, very helpful for speed tuning your teams, because knowing the speed of the various champions can be very helpful. We go here to Doom Tower, for example. We can check Doom Tower. We can actually check out, we're on floor 3, so we can go to normal, and let's go check stage 32. Well, stage 32, there's a lot more champions here, so we can actually see the speeds of all the champions. You can see the resistances and accuracy of these champions. If you want their HP, you can certainly see them as well. And this is very, very helpful for figuring out how to build your teams. Maybe if you're looking forward to see, can I beat this next floor? Am I fast enough? Am I going to run into speed issues? Very, very helpful tool for tuning your teams and building teams for specific content. One of my favorite sites for the Clanboss is Deadwood Jedi website. It is deadwoodjedi.com. Again, I'll have a link in the description below. We've got all kinds of fun stuff here. You have an arena calculator if you want to be able to calculate what kind of speeds you need from your first champion all the way to your last champion to make sure that you are not interrupted under most circumstances. And I say under most because that certainly is not counting the fact that you might have somebody like a Valkyrie on the other team, or a Xena on the other team, or somebody else that gets turn meter boost based off of you getting buffed. So there's some extent of, it certainly does know who you're going to be going against. But for the most part, you can build yourself a team that says, if I get to go first, how fast does my fastest champion need to be? How about the next champion? How about the next champion? So very, very interesting here. I don't know if this actually has all the champions in it. I know that Deadwood has been updating this off and on. So not every champion is in some of these calculators at the moment, but you can generally feel out what you're doing for most champions in that arena calculator. You can also take a look at the Clanboss Calculator. We did this in another video. I did a unkillable myth air team. You can find the link up above. That one, we showed a little bit about how to use the Clanboss Calculator. And then of course, there's the different speed tunes for the Clanboss. So I can look here and they'll talk to you about the different names of these teams. They'll give you an idea of what the key performance is. Now keep in mind the key performance is with generally okay to good gear. If your gear is outstanding endgame gear, it may be more. You might be able to do 1 key where it says you might do 2 key. On the other hand, if it says it's a 1 key, but your gear is not quite up to snuff, or your champions aren't quite fully built, you might still be 2 keying with that team, depending on how it's built. The other thing you have here is the difficulty. Generally, the difficulty is how fiddly is the tune, how difficult is it to set up. Easier setups generally have little to no pre-setup, are basically full auto for the most part, whereas the more difficult ones are often require a little bit of setup or are finicky enough where they need a very specific speed within a range of maybe plus or minus 1 or even plus or minus less than 1. Sometimes you need specific modifiers and specific gear to get to a specific decimal place with your true speed. But overall, there's a lot of interesting, useful builds right here, and it's nice to know whether or not these are Ultra Nightmare teams or not. Generally, you're not going to find anything that's not an Ultra Nightmare team, because below Ultra Nightmare, you can generally do Nightmare with almost any team to at least 2 key it. So these are where your ultimate teams are. If you're looking for filters, you can certainly do filters here, and you can search. So you can search by specific champions. So if you want to find teams that involve Helicath and Maneater, for example, we can filter that, and it'll generally show you ones that use those 2 champions, or at least one of those 2 champions. You can also just go up here and search. So maybe we want to search here for the Myth Air, which was a clan boss we ran earlier, as I mentioned in the video. Well, there is the Myth Air, but you also could, for example, look up the Myth Fu. And meanwhile, while we look at these teams here, you can see how fast these things are. You can see the level of speed that you're going to need for these champions. Sometimes it gives you a single speed and doesn't give you a range. Sometimes it does give you a speed range, but you definitely can see what type of champions you need, whether or not any of them are changeable or not. And sometimes they will talk about whether or not you can change some of the champions or whether or not you can. In this comp, for example, it needs these specific champions for this particular toon. There are toons with different champions that are very similar teams, but this specific comp needs these 4 specific champions and a DPS to go in this slot here, and the DPS does need to fall under certain conditions to be able to be tuned properly as well. For example, it will actually talk to you about tuning certain champions depending on what champion you're looking to use. Sometimes you'll see like the Ninja variant right here, or the Gentoro variant. Very good clan boss damage dealers, but they oftentimes need very specific tunes because Ninja affects turn meter with his A1. Gentoro has a turn meter manipulation on his passive where turn meter boosts for him give him more turn meter as well. So their champions like that can be a bit of a problem. Champions with bonus turn meter can be a bit of a problem as well. But that's where the calculator comes in. So if we click here on the calculator and it loads up, and lo and behold, now we are looking here at the calculator. We can set our speed aura here, which to be fair does not have to be this champion. The speed aura is whoever happens to be in the first team. And then we can set up things like the delays, things like which champion is going to be doing their skill first. So you can see Eris does not have any delays, whereas Demitha, she wants to delay her A2 by 1 turn, and so she's going to do her A3 first, which is the block damage, not a big deal. You can certainly change out what they are doing as well. You can actually make notes too. So for example, we could put in block damage here, and you'll notice it filled it in every time that block damage is running. You've got her with the speed and remove debuff, so it kind of explains a little bit about what is going on. We've got Fushan here as well, and if I wanted to turn things off, I can certainly go down and turn off his A3, for example, if I wanted to. Not that I need to, for example, but I can turn this off as well, just making the cooldown to 0, or change the priority a bit, but generally the cooldown is the easiest way to do this. This also allows you to look at unbooking champions or booking them differently as well. And then on top of that, if you go into the speed, this is where you'll do a drop down to check things like, let's scroll down just a bit, but you can see different speed, perception, etc. Gears, base speed, if you need to adjust the base speed for some reason, maybe they're only a 5-star, so you need to adjust that a little bit as well. That all makes a difference. Lore of Steel can be useful as well. If you're using a speed set or perception set or anything that affects speed, Lore of Steel can affect that as well. So lots of information to make sure that once you set the team up, you are unkillable. And generally the way to find out if you're unkillable is to make sure that at some point in time you get into lockstep where everything is happening at the same time. So this team, as built with the speeds that they have listed right here with these champions, is speed tuned properly. And you filling this out can help save a ton of time troubleshooting, tweaking little bits of speed, and kind of knowing what's going to be a problem. That doesn't mean that you're going to get it perfect on the first time, but the amount of time saved, and honestly, in many of these cases here, just the ability to play with the teams and the speeds here in a calculator without having to run the keys could save you hours of time and possibly thousands of gems in running clan boss keys. Finally, another site very similar to Hell Hades' site is Ayumilove's. There are tutorials here. There are Wikipedia pages effectively on various champions. There's a lot of interesting articles here as well, so you can certainly find out about the different bosses by going on them and taking a look. They talk about the different content. There's some guides to them. There's breakdown on what these champions do. You can find a lot of this on Hell Hades as well. Sometimes I find it nice to look at multiple sites to be able to compare what different sites think of different champions. In my case, I tend to read the kits and figure it out myself, but I know the game very well. For people that don't, these are good resources, particularly if you're learning. There are 800 champions in this game, so it is very difficult for you to pick up and know the kits of all 800s of them. Heck, I still don't know the kits of about half the champions in the game. I know some of the rares, a lot of the epics, a good chunk of the legendaries, and most of the mythicals, but even the mythicals, very complex champions, hard for me to understand. And to be fair, if I'm not using them and I'm not encountering them, it is very easy for them to kind of fall out in the back of my mind, and I may have to refresh myself by looking at a website like this. So Ayumilove is another really good website. It certainly loads a little bit differently than Hell Hades, so it might actually run a little faster depending on what you're looking for. It is more of a Wikipedia style format. That doesn't mean that you can go in here and edit it as you will. It's controlled by Ayumilove, and I'm sure some of his staff as well. Ayumilove is I believe a Chinese content creator. I'm not 100% sure. I think he's an Asian content creator of some kind. He does do videos as well on occasion. I haven't had a chance to check him out too much, but give him some love as well. And yeah, if you need any other websites to look for different information and you're not sure if you want to trust just Hell Hades write up on that, well, Ayumilove can certainly help you find all the information you need about Raid. So back on Hell Hades' website here, one of the things I want to talk to you about is the artifact extractor and the optimizer. This is a free tool, although there are certainly paid extensions to this you can buy, and it gives you all kinds of interesting options here. So you can certainly look at your various champions on your account, see the various stats you have for them. It sorts them out here if I want to filter for one. So say I want to find my Rhodos. There's my 2 Rhodoses, and you can certainly see, you get a little bit of a preview of what gear that they've got on them. You get the stat preview as well, whether or not they are booked, the masteries that they have, their effective HP, and that sort of stuff as well. I can go in here further and I can actually see the specific gear, and it tells me how good the gear tends to be as well. This is, very helpful if you're kind of trying to figure out how to build your champions. Some gear is definitely better than other gear. You'll see here, for example, I've got a bunch of godlike pieces on him, as well as several legendary and a couple very strong. Do keep in mind, this is the opinion of the algorithm that has been built by the Hell Hades team. So you may choose to disagree with this a little bit. In fact, let's just zoom in a little bit, make this just a little bit bigger. There we go. And you may disagree a little bit with where they rate some of these pieces. For example, I would argue that this is a very, very good, maybe a legendary piece here, but I can certainly understand. The problem is that this is very good specifically for Rhodos with the rest of the pieces he's using. So I can kind of understand where very strong is, because there's very few champions that need attack percent and HP percent, for example. You can even see the glyphs that I have on here as well. And if I wanted to rebuild him, I can go into the optimizer, or actually click down here. So we can do optimize. Let me zoom. I can't zoom out there. But let me move my camera over. All right, so we go down here, the optimize. We can go here. I can do balance mode. I can do damage mode. I can do survival mode. Damage mode is pretty easy, so I can do things such as I can say I want him to look for specific sets, or maybe I don't. Maybe I specifically want to build, for example, a merciless Rhodos. So variable sets to include here. So I could say merciless. That's to include or not include. So I can select all. I can go select none and tell them I only want to see merciless. See if that works as well. You can build him, you can go to the specific stats, so maybe you only want to make him specific speed. So if I want to make sure my Rhodos is at least 250 speed, for example, I can set that goal there. I can set a maximum if I don't want him to be too fast. So maybe, for example, I have him in a team where I need him to be slower than 270 speed. So maybe I will put the 270 speed in here max. And then I can optimize. Once this is done, I can also set the glyphs. So I can set, maybe I'm going to assume that I should be able to get 350 from those, and I should be able to get plus 3% there, and we'll just say 12 here. So I can set what my minimum glyphs are going to be for, I can assume, and that helps me also figure out whether or not some of the gear I have is good because the glyphs on it are very strong, or just because it's really good gear. So being able to set the speed to minimum +4, for example, as well, very helpful. It does mean I may have to go back and glyph some of these pieces because they may not be glyphed to start with, but it's overall good for knowing how to build your champions. Now here is the trick with the optimizer. If you don't know how to build your champions, using the optimizer is not going to help you as much as you might think. Yes, you can certainly do an average build, or you can certainly aim for a specific stat, but knowing the stats you are looking for, knowing the sets you might be looking for, are going to both help you find the right gear and have it on your account, and then later on build these champions as well. So don't use this as a substitute for building your own champions, not knowing how to build them. Learning how to build champions yourself will help you make the optimizer that much of a better tool. Okay, so I've run the optimizer, which, to be fair, you can certainly run it on other stuff, but to run it on your PC, it does generally prefer to have a GPU attached to it. If you don't have a GPU, you have to run it in the server mode, which can take a little bit while. If you've got a GPU and you can attach to your GPU, it uses your GPU to do the processor to offload a lot of the server load, which means it is both faster and I believe it is 100% free that way, whereas it can definitely be problematic otherwise. So looking at what we currently set, this is the recommended build for damage with Rhodos in Merciless. You'll notice that it does not have him in Merciless accessories here because, well, I don't have a lot of Merciless accessories for the Undead. Very unfortunate. So it does tell me here, these are the pieces it wants to pull. In some cases, it tells me if it's on somebody or if it's not. So you can see this is on my Toshiro, this is on my Trunda, this is on my Geralt. And overall, I can certainly see whether or not I want to pull these pieces. And if I, for example, don't want to pull off my Toshiro, for example, I can lock my Toshiro and then rerun the optimizer. And then the next time it runs it, it will not grab my Toshiro. So if you know preemptively some of the champions you want to lock, for example, you could certainly go into the champions and lock them specifically. They've got the little lock icon here, or you can unlock them as you need to. As you'll see, I've got a couple champions here locked. I don't use the optimizer too often on my main account because I do like to do a lot of the hands-on building. But it doesn't mean that it's not a great tool. And certainly when I go in and do it, quite often if I'm going to rip my account apart, which is certainly one of the things that's worthwhile trying, I can lock certain champions as I go to see if I really want to pull the gear off of that particular champion or if it's not worth pulling the gear off of that specific champion, and then I'll lock. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do to optimize your account with the Hell Hades optimizer. So the final one we're going to talk about is the RSL helper, although we're going to talk a little bit more about the Hell Hades artifact optimizer as well, because how you run them is very similar as well. So to generally get the Hell Hades optimizer running, you want to have the out there ready to go. You get installed on your computer and then you run it, and you're going to want to run it as administrator. So when I run this, it'll ask me if I want to run it as administrator, and then I will get this up and running and it will be ready to go before I start Polarium play. So here it is, loaded up, ready to go. As we can see here, it does not detect RAID as running at the moment. So we must be running RAID on a Polarium play. I don't have RAID open at the moment, therefore it has not detected my account. Now, RSL Helper is very similar. Again, I recommend running this as administrator if you can, because that allows it to hook into Polarium play. Now, I do have Polarium play up at the moment, so you can see here I've got my free-to-play ready to go. So I can start RSL Helper, which will do administrative stuff. You can see here the little icon says it will run as administrator. And after running it, RSL Helper will start up RAID from Polarium play. If Polarium play is not started, it will load up Polarium play and then immediately start the current logged in account. So if you flip through multiple accounts, you're better off starting Polarium play first, selecting the account you want to log in, and starting up RSL Helper. So we get RSL Helper here, and it's got a window where it will help you see what it's doing. You can actually see some of your champions as well. So let's shrink this down just a little bit so that we can kind of see what RSL Helper is doing. So if I go into a fight, so let's go take a look and see if I can find an arena fight here, because on the free-to-play, I do need to be farming arena regularly. That is a lone, here we go. So this is an easy fight. We'll stop in this one. We'll start this one on auto. I will hit start, and you know it's working if it actually sees the champions you're running on your current team and shows you their current build. That means it has hooked itself into the account that you are currently working on, and will allow you to see what you're doing, what you've earned. So it actually tells me the rewards I've earned from that previous fight, and it tells me the champions I was using, which is very helpful as well. You can actually use this to see different stages as well. So if I go into, say, the Fire Knight here and go check out Fire Knight 25, I can go to this little show stage info right here, and that will show us the different dungeons. So I can show dungeon, I can see the Fire Knight, there it is, Fire Knight's Castle, normal, stage 25, and now I can see the different floors. Next round, and it even tells me approximately how much accuracy I'm going to need for that floor, as well as how much resistance I'm going to need. Again, very similar to the Hell Hades Stages tool, but you can do this from RSL Helper as well. You can actually do all kinds of fun stuff with RSL Helper. One of the things you can do with RSL Helper is you can go in and take a look at the cell setups and make cell setups with various equipment. So for example, I have this set up to sell all of the lower three pieces, so my gloves, my chests, and my boots, that have flat HP, flat attack, and flat defense. Or I could, for example, if I decide I wanted to keep them instead, I can keep them. And I can edit these rules, I can move them around, I can add new rules, I can make very specific rules. I can make rules about the substats, whether or not they have to have a certain number on them. So I can say a minimum speed, for example. If I want to do a gear cleanse and say I don't want to keep any pieces that have less than 5 points in speed, well, then I can certainly set that and it will actually look at that gear and it can sort it out. You can do a cell file with this. I personally prefer to set this to be somewhat basic to clean out the absolute junk. And then I like to manually do gear cleansing just a little bit later. And a lot of that is because as these rules get more and more complicated, I can understand some of these rules, but like my cell file has over 150 rules, and it's probably one of the lighter cell files in the game as far as ones that have been published by content creators. I have seen ones that have over 900 rules in them. I've seen ones that are very specific about specific sets that have specific stats that have to have certain frequencies. And I've also seen a couple of them, people have started working on ones that are very specific farming areas. So I could set one up for Ice Golem, for example, and a different cell file up for Fire Knight. And those would be useful, other than I would have to swap them around as I go. But again, RSL Helper gives you a lot of extra cool tools. I can also, for example, tell it to run this until next max HP. I don't have anybody that's going to be leveled up, so that will run indefinitely. If I just say run effective resources, it will farm as long as I have energy. And if I don't have any energy, it will sit and wait. And it will wait, and it will then eventually check in and say, hey, now he's got enough energy, now I can run the dungeon. And it's not going to do it the second you get that energy, but it is going to do it at some point in time within 1 point of that energy to get that in there. Very, very helpful. The next to max HP I find very helpful runner in campaign, so therefore I can often run chickens in campaign at different levels, and then I can actually, max out one of them, so I need to max out the lowest level or the one that's closest to the max level, and then it's done. You can have this set up to automatically farm your Minotaur scrolls, for example. If you go into Minotaur, for example, here, we'll actually do that. Minotaur's Labyrinth here. So if we actually show down right here, you'll now see condition requirements here. So I can actually set it to specific requirements. Say I don't necessarily want to get to all the scrolls for these champions here. Maybe I only need 750 red scrolls. Well, now I can actually edit that now that I get off of next to max HP and go just 750 here and be done with it. I could also check next to max HP, for example, knowing that my Templar here that I'm currently working on for Baumel is going to stop getting levels at level 50 and I'm going to want to assign him to 6-star. Well, if I put it to next to max HP, it'll continue to farm, assuming I'm not going to finish off all of his scrolls before he gets to level 50. And if he is, then it's just going to run Minotaur and get him some extra energy. But all kinds of interesting ways you can use RSL Helper. Where can you grab RSL Helper? Well, I will have a link down below. You can also check out my Discord. I do have links to a lot of this stuff in Discord. I have a feed from Farbstoff. He is a German content creator. He's the one that creates RSL Helper. I have the feed, so I get news in my Discord. I get all kinds of other news from other places as well. Definitely tools to check out. That's actually one final thing to check out is Discord. So this here is my Discord. It is a great tool. There is also a Raid official Discord as well. You can certainly find that. Raid advertises that in all kinds of places. Good place to talk with fellow members of the community. My Discord is a wonderful, wonderful tool to find great and helpful people in Discord. So you can, for example, go down here to Raid Help and ask questions. We've had people asking questions. We've had people posting questions with their rosters, and I will certainly help folks as well. There will be other people in here that do like to help folks as well. So it's not just going to be me. You're going to be picking the brain of multiple community members here. We have a place to brag because, of course, it's always fun to brag about some of the cool stuff you've gotten. So you can see here, we had somebody who's done a huge Hydra key that he's super proud of. Somebody got Lausanne. Somebody got an Acresia here. That may have been me. We've got a lot of fun stuff here. It is a great community. We get the raid announcements here as well. I've got a feed for Smiley TK's pack offers. He does a lot of content creation on spending. So if you ever need a guide as to whether or not a pack is particularly good, this is one of the places you can get that. If you don't follow Smiley TK, certainly follow him as well. He's a great dude. We've got all kinds of useful stuff here. You can also, keep in touch. We've got the video announcements here. We've got my Herd Members Club, where I will often announce the videos I'm doing early, show off the thumbnails, and talk to my fans if they've got anything here. We do announcements, so if you ever want to know if I'm going to be streaming, any announcements I have as far as news, they're there. Get my video announcements as well. It's a great place to be a member of the community and a great place to find useful things about Raid. Finally, as we mentioned before, we're talking about RSL Helper. Here is indeed the feed for RSL Helper. So you can see here, we're getting the updates. Do keep in mind that RSL Helper is a fan project. So Farbstoff does take donations, but no one's actually paying him to do this. He does work with Polarium, but that also means that he sometimes needs to get approval from Polarium before he implements new features. And every time Raid patches, it effectively breaks how RSL Helper works, and it needs to get updated. So don't be mad at Farbstoff for this occasionally go down. It is a fan-maintained tool, and they can't necessarily work preemptively with Polarium to make sure it works with every update. That's just, unfortunately, the nature of the game. So that is a tour of some of the better Raid Shadow Legends tools, but there are a ton of stuff out there. There are several other websites. I know MTG has a website. I know Gustle Gaming has a website that's got some interesting stuff as well. There are a lot of other creators that have some tools. I know I'm going to be working with Fastidious on possibly generating some tools on his website as well. So there are some wonderful, wonderful places where you can learn more about the game. You can find ways to learn more about the champions, learn more about the mechanics, and overall just kind of help your experience in your Raid Shadow Legends journey. Again, check my link out down below if you want to get started. You get a couple great epics. It's a wonderful way to start in Raid, and appreciate you guys all hanging out. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. You are absolutely amazing. Hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.